Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by a couple of my MLB experts on this version of the Coast to Coast podcast. We got Nate Weitzer and Mo Nwara here with us today. We're going to go ahead and take a look at our second episode here, fellas. I know we don't have that many games, as many as we would like, anyway, for the nighttime and the evening slate here. As we mentioned in the first episode, we're not necessarily going to be able to get to those morning on the West Coast games and super early afternoon on the East Coast in a lot of instances. So we are going to look to continue to get those evening ones to you. We've got a good amount of them here and some best bets that we do like. But before we start diving into some of the best bets and the things we like in these games tonight, Nate, let's go ahead and give the entire slate here for everybody.
Yeah, it's kind of a double opening day here with a ton of day games on Friday, including the Red Sox at Yankees. That one was rained out on Thursday, so now we have Eovaldi versus Garrett Cole. Yankees are minus 175 at home. I see some value there for the Sox. White Sox at Tigers. Eduardo Rodriguez going for the Tigers there, former Sox. Plus 110 for Detroit at home. Milwaukee is minus 150 at Chicago. Oakland plus 160 at Philly. Baltimore plus 160 at Tampa. Seattle and Minnesota, basically a toss-up with Robbie Ray going for the Mariners. Dodgers minus 210 at Coors Field against the Rockies. Miami is plus 118 at the Giants. Then we get to the night games here, which we'll focus on. Max Scherzer is going to pitch for the Mets already, and they are minus 176 at Washington. The Rangers are plus 148 at the Blue Jays as they debut John Gray, their new ace, and Cincinnati Reds plus 158 at the Braves. Also, we have the Astros Angels, game 2 of that series, and then the Padres Diamondbacks. What they are in action right now as we record this on Thursday night. So yeah, guys, what do you like the most here in terms of this night slate? Where would your smart money be?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to toss to me first, I'm going to talk about the Mets all day, every day, twice on Sundays. I think this is the marquee matchup for people in terms of the fact that Scherzer's pitching against his former team, who he hasn't pitched against in forever. So really not any relevance there. But yeah, I think this is what most people want to know is how is he going to do coming off a 15-4 season with a sub-3 ERA. I mean, he's still firing for sure. Obviously, it was a little disappointing that DeGrom was not able to go for the Mets on opening night, although I think they're still doing all right as we're recording this against those Nats. I think
don't jinx it.
Yeah, look, man, as far as jinxes go for the Mets, man, I don't know if I could do any worse than we've had our entire life. I mean, every single, time you'll sort of see somebody talking about, I would consider the Mets, they look good in this position, XYZ. It's always followed up with the caveat. Let's all remember it is the Mets, but still the numbers say X, right? And I think in this case, it is a matchup that's favorable for them. The Nats did not retool in any way. They're obviously still sort of going for that tank, if you will. I don't know if that's a word we're allowed to use yet, but at game 1, but it's still obvious that, outside of Soto, I'm not really sure what they have to boast about, despite the fact that he is considered one of the best players in the league. So I think, the things that I look for is Scherzer definitely to go, I would say roughly 5-6 innings in this game. I think he gets to 6. In which case I do kind of like him with the ability with that, that ratio there to get roughly 6 strikeouts, which I believe his prop is about 6.5. So I really do think it's dependent on if they're willing to let him go 7 if you want to touch that, which I don't necessarily. Something I do like is the fact that, they're going against Josiah Gray here, who had one start. He struggled in his first season of the bigs last year for sure with, over 5.5 there on his ERA as well. And I think that one start he had against the Mets as well, he only lasted 3 innings in that one, gave up 2 homers and 6 runs in that time span. And I think he's ripe for home runs right now as well. The Mets in their 9 games in Washington, in DC last year, they had 16 homers. So they definitely were capable of hitting the ball out of that park. And this is a guy who I think is still obviously struggling with a bit of control, and there's home runs to be had. I'll bring it to Pete Alonso, who also was smashed the ball against the Nats with that over 400 average, 5 homers in his 19 games against against them with that over 1.2 OPS. So yeah, he looked really, really good. I think he continues that tonight. His home run prop plus 230, as we're going to see, obviously a lot of these home run props at about 0.5 for the most part. But his is to get a home run is plus 230, which I think is pretty good value for your money there in a game that I think we'll see some runs.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is how healthy is that hamstring, and how deep is he going to be able to go based on that? The thing is, you said they're going to probably take him out in the 5th or 6th inning. You don't take Max Scherzer out. He tells you when he comes out of the game. Hopefully, if the Mets know what's good for them, they'll let him harness that competitive spirit here in that little revenge spot. But I mean, they're just a far superior roster on paper to the Nationals, who are completely rebuilding, as you pointed out. And I think there's something about turning the page after the way the Mets season went with that massive payroll. We are seeing them, again, knock on wood, win the opener here. And I think they will pick up some momentum now with Scherzer on the mound. I'm looking for the Blue Jays to start hot again. After the way they closed last season, on fire. I mean, that offense is just so dynamic that I'm not hesitating to think about the run line here at plus 115 to win by 2 rather than going for the money line. Because John Gray, who's going for the Rangers, they minted into a nice 4-year, $56 million. I mean, he's kind of a boom bust pitcher, and you might want to look at it as, he was at Coors Field. But I mean, his road ERA and WHIP were way worse last year, even away from Coors. Steamer projects him for a pretty low ground ball rate. He has a career 35% hard hit rate. Last year in righty-righty matchups, gave up a 19% home run fly ball ratio and 21% line drive rate. So you're not only dealing with Vladdy, who we know what he does with a freaking 1.2 OPS and 31 homers in 80 home games, 3 different stadiums for the Blue Jays last year. You're dealing with a fully healthy George Springer atop that lineup. Blue Jays swapped in more power for less contact, right, with Chapman now at third base instead of Simeon. So, I mean, I would certainly look at their team total in terms of their runs. I think they can get to John Gray, and I think Jose Barrios, who's going for the Jays, is good enough to limit this new look Rangers lineup, which, Rangers offense was just awful last year. I mean, they have a completely new top of the lineup, but I'm still not really impressed with the bottom half of that lineup, and I don't think they're going to be able to keep pace.
Yeah, you won't find too many worse collections of major league bats than the bottom of this Rangers lineup. Yeah. I mean, I actually went into the season, I was pretty interested in betting Rangers over, or maybe looking at some Rangers divisional props. Couldn't do it. The bullpen is absolutely awful, and the bottom of this lineup, complete disaster. Just too many just replacements level type of players still on the roster. I didn't see any value in the line here. I think it's probably good, but yeah, I'm super interested to see how John Gray does this year outside of Coors. It, like you said, really bizarre split with not only was he way better on the at home last year than on the road, but he's actually a little better at home in his career, which is kind of crazy because you would think a little small sample, a split like that might be, you could see something weird, but it's actually been through his whole career. He's been a little better at Coors. So yeah, just really interested to see how John Gray looks. And honestly, I think if the betting angle I would look at for this game is I would just try to maybe hammer Blue Jays if they get down, because like I said, this Rangers bullpen, I mean, it's bottom 5 probably.
All right, turning into one final game here for us to talk about on this evening slate. The Braves, Mo, I know they're a team near and dear to your heart. Team will probably talk about plenty this season. Is there anything you want to talk about in this one, or at least, something for the people to look at within it?
Getting their asses kicked right now. But yeah, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. I thought the line was good, so nothing for me from a betting perspective locked in yet. But yeah, I think this is actually a little bit interesting, just mostly because of both starting pitchers have kind of something weird about them. It's Charlie Morton for the Braves, and I know we've been talking about, a lot of these pitchers maybe not going deep. And I think it's especially a concern with Charlie Morton, obviously coming off the broken leg. I'm actually a little surprised he's already pitching, to be honest. I thought he might miss a couple weeks into the season. But yeah, I guess he's ready to go, but I wouldn't anticipate a long session from him. And then on the other side, you've got Reaver San Martin, this basically kid they called up last year who he was great in 11 innings. So obviously minuscule sample there, but his minor league track record is a little bit interesting too. 14 starts last year in AAA, got tons of grounders, decent amount of strikeouts. He looked good. He looked good in the upper minors. So I think he's got some potential, it looks like. But yeah, we've got a 2-start sample of this lefty. So just basically looking to see if we can get any good reads on his talent level, honestly, and probably need a little bit more of a sample before we have any idea how good he is. But he looks like he could be a good pitcher.
Yeah, worth noting that the Braves only hit 239 against lefties last year, right? And yeah, I mean, if he's like a crafty young lefty from Cartagena, then they might be able to keep flustering the Braves. I mean, to your point about Morton, playing already and probably not going that deep, you think these teams are going to kind of almost treat April like more spring ball, right? And just really ease into the season. So maybe it is, in terms of a general trend, looking at more underdogs when you get that plus 180 line, and not just assuming that the Braves, as the defending World Series champs, are going to come out and sweep this rebuilding Reds team. It's just the season is a bit wonky because of that holdout, and I think that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think probably biggest thing I'm taking away, honestly, from opening day is I already started shading the lines away from some of these like elite pitchers. Yeah. Just because I don't think we're getting more than like 80 pitches out of a lot of these guys, which is like 4 innings in some cases. Like Shane Bieber got pulled in the 5th. I mean, I just don't think we can count on these elite guys. So I think it's interesting. You want to kind of look at a team, honestly, like the Rays. They're a team that's, if you want to look at a team that's like benefiting from this, right, the Rays are just playing like this normally, right? Where like we were talking about Scherzer, he wants to go 7. So it's totally different animal over there.
Right. He might be the exception. So I might still listen to Nate through the lens of him going 7 if he wants to, at least. Right. And don't worry about him going. I've never thought he was really going to go 5, but 6 maybe. I think that's definitely the key takeaway. Something I was going to really just follow up with the exact same note as what you said, Mo. And I was going to actually use the Brewers and Cubs game as another good illustration of what you're talking about there, where we see starting pitching going 5 innings when we're really depending originally on Colburn to go as deep as he can, and it doesn't work out in that sense. And then they end up losing 5-4 because their bullpen gives it up late, and that's what I think is the consistency. And like you said, the Rays are already playing from that standpoint. It's just a matter of time before they start a closer and go that route again. But no, I think either way, I think that's a good bet early, and maybe Scherzer I think is another area of sort of anomaly to that, because he is just a bulldog who will probably just refuse to come off the mound and scare his manager away before he can get him off there. So there's some places to find value there, and for the most part, I think the value is where we're talking about, which is starting pitching not necessarily being just ridden into the ground and being taken out within that 5-inning span. So gentlemen, that is all the time we have in this one. Another good show on our second episode here of the MLB version of the Coast to Coast pod. We'll continue to bring you these evening games as best we can. Get to some morning ones whenever it's possible, but not likely for the most part, as we'll continue to look for some value in these evening games. And a lot of times we've got the best matchups at that point anyway, right? With some marquee matchups and everyone getting the best games they can when they're off of work, etc. So we'll look to continue to bring you all that stuff here. And until we see you next, happy betting.